Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The barrel of the suppressed Sig Sauer pressed cold and hard against Julian's temple, the metal biting into his skin just hard enough to promise death. But the Omega didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He simply stared up into the murderous, dilated pupils of the most dangerous alpha in the city, waiting for the trigger to snap. "Give me one reason," Dante Cashin snarled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, smelling of burnt cedar and gunpowder. "One reason why I shouldn't paint the nursery walls with your brains right now for touching my son." The room was frozen in a tableau of violence. Rain lashed against the bulletproof glass of the penthouse estate, casting jagged shadows across the room. On the floor, 10-year-old Leo sat panting, his blind eyes wide, sweat matting his dark hair. To an outsider, it looked like abuse. To Dante, the don of the Cashin Syndicate, it looked like treason. "Because," Julian whispered, his voice steady despite the gun boring into his skull, his own scent of vanilla and distress spiked with a steely resolve. "If you kill me, the assassin standing behind the curtains, the one your guards missed, will kill Leo before your casing hits the floor." 3 months earlier, Julian Vane had walked into the Cashin estate with a fake resume and a desperate need to disappear. The Cashin estate was less a home and more a fortress carved from black marble and paranoia. It sat on the edge of the cliffs, overlooking the churning gray ocean, a monument to the power of the Cashin family. Dante Cashin was a man mythologized in the underworld, a ruthless alpha who had carved his empire out of bone and blood. But even emperors had weaknesses, and Dante's was his son, Leo. Leo had lost his sight in the same car bombing that had taken his mother's life 3 years ago. Since then, Dante had treated the boy like a porcelain doll, trapping him in a gilded cage of tutors, nannies, and soft edges. He hired Omegas exclusively for the boy's care, believing them to be softer, safer. He wanted Leo coddled. He wanted Leo to never know the violence of his father's world. Julian was hired because he looked the part. He was slender, with soft features, honey-colored hair, and large, expressive eyes that suggested submissiveness. His resume claimed he was a specialized educator for disabled children. It didn't mention that Julian was formerly known as the Wraith in the underground fighting pits of the lower district. It didn't mention that he was hiding from a debt collector that would skin him alive. It didn't mention that he could snap a man's neck with his thighs. Dante barely looked at him during the interview. He sat behind his massive desk, signing death warrants disguised as shipping manifests. "My son is not to leave the 3rd floor," Dante had said, not looking up. "He is not to be upset. He is not to be exposed to sharp objects, loud noises, or the news. You are to read to him, feed him, and ensure he feels safe. If he gets so much as a paper cut, Mr. Vane, I will have your hands removed. Am I clear?" "Crystal, sir," Julian had replied, lowering his gaze. The dynamic was established immediately. Dante was the god of this world. Julian was the servant. Dante ignored him, looking past him as if he were furniture, only acknowledging him to bark orders or demand reports on Leo's health. But Julian watched. He watched the way Dante would stand outside Leo's door late at night, smelling of whiskey and regret, too afraid to go in and face the damage his world had caused his son. He watched the way the guards rotated, finding holes in their perimeter that an amateur could exploit. And he watched Leo. Leo wasn't fragile. He was angry. The boy was rotting in that room. He threw tantrums that terrified the other staff, smashing vases and screaming until his throat was raw. He hated the pity. He hated the softness. "I'm not a baby," Leo had screamed one afternoon, throwing a braille book at Julian's head. Julian caught it effortlessly with one hand, without looking up from his tea. The silence that followed was heavy. Leo froze, his head cocking to the side. You caught that?" "I did," Julian said calmly. "How?" "I didn't hear you move. I moved quietly, like a ghost." "Like someone who wants to survive," Julian corrected. He walked over to the boy. "You're angry, Leo. You feel helpless because you can't see the threats coming. Your father tries to protect you by building walls, but walls just make you blind and trapped." Leo's lower lip trembled. "He thinks I'm broken." "Are you?" "I can't see." "So?" Julian dropped the book on the table with a heavy thud. You have 4 other senses, and they are sharper than anyone else's in this house. You hear the guards change shift 2 minutes before they do. You smell the rain before the clouds gather. You aren't broken, Leo. You're just untrained. That was the beginning. It started as a game. Julian taught Leo to identify objects by the displacement of air. Then, he taught him to map the room by the sound of his own footsteps, echolocation. Click your tongue, Julian instructed, tying a blindfold over his own eyes to level the playing field. Listen to the bounce back. Weeks turned into months. The bond between them deepened. For Julian, Leo was the little brother he never had. For Leo, Julian was the first person who didn't treat him like a victim. But as Leo's confidence grew, so did the danger. Julian noticed things, subtle shifts in the household staff. A new gardener who walked with a military gait. A maid who lingered too long near the security panels. The syndicate war was heating up, and Dante was often away, coming home smelling of blood and ozone, his temper short. Julian knew it was only a matter of time before the war came to the house. "I want to fight," Leo said one evening, standing in the center of the nursery, his posture rigid. "Leo, if your father finds out." "He won't. He's never here," Leo shouted, tears springing to his dead eyes. "I want to stop being afraid, Julian. Please, teach me how to hurt them if they come for me." Julian looked at the small, fierce boy. He thought of the debt collectors hunting him, and the enemies hunting Dante. He knew the Alpha's protection wasn't absolute. "Okay," Julian whispered. "But this is our secret. If the boss finds out, I'm dead." The training shifted. It wasn't about strength. Leo was 10. It was about leverage, anatomy, and using the enemy's momentum. It was about targeting the soft spots, the throat, the groin, the eyes. It was about using his hearing to pinpoint a location. "Breath is the giveaway," Julian murmured, circling Leo on the soft carpet. "Hold your breath, and you vanish. Listen for theirs. Strike where the sound originates." They trained during thunderstorms, when the thunder masked the sound of bodies hitting the mats. Julian was careful, gentle, but firm. He saw the boy transform. Leo walked taller. He stopped screaming. He started moving with a predatory grace that mirrored his father's. Dante noticed the change in his son's mood, but he attributed it to Julian's excellent caretaking. He even gave Julian a rare nod of approval one evening in the hallway. "He seems happier," Dante had grunted, loosening his tie, his silver eyes raking over Julian's form with a lingering intensity that made Julian's omega instincts flare hot. "Whatever you're reading to him, keep doing it." "Yes, sir," Julian had said, suppressing the urge to shiver under that alpha gaze. The tension between them was growing, a slow burn of attraction that neither would acknowledge. Dante was the master, Julian was the help. But sometimes, when their hands brushed passing a dinner tray, the air crackled with electricity. Then came the night of the storm. Dante had returned home early. A deal had gone south. Paranoia was eating him alive. He needed to see his son. He bypassed the security check-in, bypassed the staff, and walked silently up the grand staircase to the 3rd floor. He expected to hear a bedtime story. He expected to hear soft laughter. Instead, he heard a grunt of exertion and the sickening thud of a body hitting the floor. Dante's blood ran cold. He drew his weapon, kicked the door open, and saw a nightmare. The nursery furniture was pushed back. Julian stood over Leo. Julian's hand was raised, and Leo was on the ground, scrambling backward. To Dante, it looked like Julian had just struck him. The alpha roar that tore from Dante's throat shattered the window's vibration. "Get away from him." Julian spun around, eyes wide, but he didn't cower. Dante crossed the room in a blur of speed, grabbing Julian by the throat and slamming him against the wall. The gun came up. The intro of our story played out in real time. The barrel against the temple. The promise of death. "Give me one reason," Dante snarled. "Because if you kill me," Julian whispered, "the assassin standing behind the curtains will kill Leo." Dante froze. The alpha in him wanted to rip Julian apart, but the Don in him, the strategist, heard the absolute conviction in the Omega's voice. Dante's eyes flicked to the heavy velvet curtains near the balcony door. The window was open a crack. The rain was loud, masking everything. "Liar," Dante hissed, but he didn't pull the trigger. "Check the floor by the curtain," Julian said, choking against Dante's grip. Mud. Size 12 boot. Not yours. Not mine. Dante's gaze shifted. A faint smear of wet earth on the pristine cream carpet. Dante released Julian, shoving him aside, and leveled his gun at the curtains. Come out. Silence. Then, the curtains exploded outward. A figure clad in black tactical gear surged forward, a knife gleaming in the lightning flash. The assassin didn't go for Dante. He went for the weaker target. He lunged for Leo. Leo! Dante screamed, firing a shot that went wide as the assassin tackled him. The gun skittered across the floor. Dante was a powerful alpha, but he was tired, injured from the day's events, and caught off guard. The assassin was fresh. They grappled on the floor, a brutal exchange of fists and knees. The assassin managed to kick Dante back, stunning him, and turned toward the boy huddled in the center of the room. No! Dante roared, scrambling to get up, but he was too far. The assassin reached for Leo. Leo didn't scream. He didn't cry. He stood perfectly still, his head cocked to the side, listening to the heavy breathing rushing toward him. 3 steps, Leo whispered. The assassin reached out to grab the boy's hair. Leo dropped. It was a move of fluid, practiced perfection. He dropped to his knees, dodging the grab, and drove his small fist upward, using the momentum Julian had taught him. He didn't have the strength to knock a man out, but he had a taser, stolen from the guards, modified by Julian, palmed in his hand. He jammed the device into the assassin's femoral artery and triggered it. The assassin convulsed, his legs seizing, and he collapsed with a howl of agony. Before the man could recover, a blur of motion swept past Leo. It was Julian. Julian didn't fight like a nanny. He fought like a demon. He wrapped his legs around the assassin's neck in a flying triangle choke, twisting with a sickening crack. He drove his elbow into the man's temple, once, twice, brutal, efficient, lethal. The assassin went limp. Julian rolled off the body, panting, his hair plastered to his forehead. He immediately scrambled over to Leo, checking him frantically. Did he touch you? Leo, report. Injury check. I'm okay, Leo breathed, adrenaline shaking his voice. I heard him. I heard the fabric of his pants rub together before he lunged. I did it, Julian. I did it. You did perfect, little wolf. Perfect. Julian pulled the boy into a fierce hug, rocking him. Silence descended on the room, heavier than before. Dante stood slowly, clutching his bruised ribs. He looked at the unconscious assassin. He looked at the taser in his son's hand. He looked at the Omega who had just executed a special forces level takedown. He was speechless. The rage was gone, replaced by a profound, disorienting shock. Dante walked over, his footsteps heavy. Julian stiffened, pushing Leo behind him, looking up at Dante with defiant, terrified eyes. He expected the bullet now. He had lied on his resume. He had weaponized the air. He had endangered the child. Dante dropped to his knees. He wasn't looming over them. He was on their level. The great alpha, the Mafia boss who bowed to no one, knelt on the blood-stained carpet. He looked at Leo. You fought him. Julian taught me, Leo said, his voice small but proud. He taught me how to see with my ears, Dad. He taught me so I wouldn't be scared anymore. Dante looked at Julian. He saw the bruise forming on Julian's neck where he had choked him moments ago. He saw the fierce protectiveness in the Omega's stance. Who are you? Dante whispered. Julian Vane, the Omega said, his voice cracking. Just the nanny. No nanny breaks a neck like that. I had a life before this. A bad one. Julian looked down. I know you're going to fire me. I know you're going to kill me for lying. But please, don't stop his training. He needs it. He's strong, Dante. He's so strong. Dante reached out. Julian flinched, closing his eyes. But the blow didn't come. Dante's large, rough hand cupped Julian's cheek, his thumb brushing over the bruise he had caused. The touch was impossibly gentle, trembling slightly. You saved him, Dante choked out, his voice raw with emotion. I was here, and I missed it. I was so busy building walls to keep him safe that I didn't see the snake inside them. But you saw. I heard, Julian corrected softly. Dante's eyes moved to his son. Leo, Dad, come here. Leo stepped forward, and Dante pulled both of them into his arms. It was a breach of protocol, a breach of class, a breach of everything the Cashin Syndicate stood for. The Alpha holding his heir and the hired help in a desperate, crushing embrace on the floor. Dante buried his face in Julian's neck, inhaling the scent of vanilla and rain. "I almost killed you," he murmured against Julian's skin, the horror of it making him shake. "I had a gun to your head while you were saving my son." "It's okay," Julian whispered, his hands hesitantly coming up to grip Dante's soaking wet shirt. "It's okay. You're the Alpha. You were protecting the pack." "You are the pack," Dante growled, the possessiveness in his tone undeniable. He pulled back, his silver eyes locking onto Julian's. The intensity was no longer anger. It was a burning, terrifying hunger mixed with reverence. "No one touches you again. No one. You hear me? You aren't the help, Julian. Not anymore." Julian's breath hitched. "Dante, I will burn the city down to find who sent this man," Dante swore, wiping a smudge of blood from Julian's cheek. "But tonight you teach me." "Teach you what?" Dante looked at his blind son, who was standing tall, holding the taser like a scepter. Then he looked at Julian, the warrior in sheep's clothing. "Teach me how to see him the way you do," Dante said. "Because I've been blind longer than he has." The storm raged outside, but inside the nursery, the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. The Alpha had been humbled, the Omega had been revealed, and the boy was no longer a victim. As Dante helped Julian to his feet, keeping a steadying arm around the Omega's waist, Julian knew his days of hiding were over. He wasn't just the tutor anymore. He was the viper who had tamed the wolf, and looking at the heat in Dante's eyes, he knew the real danger was just beginning. Not from assassins, but from the man who was now looking at him like he was the only precious thing in the world. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian take control and humble the Alpha, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a man who held a gun to your head, even if he did it to protect his child? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art. 2 men, BL, Yaoi, Man 1. Dante Cashin, tall muscular alpha, wearing soaking wet black dress shirt unbuttoned at top, silver hair, sharp jawline, expression of shock and regret, kneeling on floor. Man 2. Julian Vane, slender Omega, honey-colored hair, wearing disheveled beige cardigan and white shirt, bruise on neck, protective stance, holding a young blind boy behind him. Boy, Leo, 10 years old, dark hair, blind eyes, holding a taser. Background is a luxurious nursery room, lightning flash outside large window, heavy velvet curtains, unconscious assassin in black tactical gear lying on floor in background, rain streaks on glass, dramatic moody lighting, cinematic composition, emotional atmosphere, sharp focus, intricate details.